Is the what was the biggest challenge you face in this business of sports, and how did you overcome it?
I kind of hit on. I mean, I think I hit on mine a little bit. Again, I think on a seasonal level, it's always just understanding, particularly within the way the market we're in and the sport that we're in, that a lot of decisions that are obvious and make complete business sense to us can't always be interpreted by a fan base in the same way. And so obviously, whether it be a managerial decision that was tough for me on a personal level, or whether it be a player personnel based decision of a trade, I know we're doing the right thing. I believe in it. I know it's going to end up being the right thing for the fans, which is what it's all about. But in that moment, at that juncture in time, it's not as easily explained. So having the patience to go out and explain that and be consistent with that explanation, that can be tough on an annual basis.
Dave referenced this in my second stint in Cleveland. So I was with the Lumberjacks in '94 through '96, the first 2 years here at the then Gund Arena at the Q. And we had an owner, I remember coming in, and I had come from the Minnesota Timberwolves, and it was an opportunity to run the team and potentially even have an ownership interest in that, and wasn't as well financed. So we had built up a great group of people, had built a tremendous culture because we had invested in the business and had some real positive things happening with that team. And I can recall, cash flow is cyclical in our business on that front, and our owner did not have a credit line, to this end. So I was projecting our cash flow. We were going to be at a point here where we weren't going to be able to make payroll in about 3 weeks' time. And I remember going in and talking about this from an ownership perspective, and I remember the comment being, they're going to flee like rats off a ship. Like, what are you talking about? Because once payroll's not made, you're going to see everybody leave. And so we can't have that happen. We've built so much from a business end. So it was given a window to be able to go out and secure a line of credit unsecured within a 3-week period to be able to make sure we can make payroll. And boy, I was sweating like crazy on that whole front. And it's one of those things you don't want to have any whisper of around the office. For those of you who have a small business and know what that's like, and because we had so much positive momentum, and fortunately it was able to work out, and we continued able to build on that front, but it was a trying time.
I guess I do have an example of unsolicited advice working. Len, I don't know if you remember this, but I saw you at the soccer field the morning after the loss to Orlando, and I just said, we were all kind of walking around with our heads down, and I said, we got to go get Shaq. I don't know if you remember, you weren't real excited to hear from me, but I said, we just got to go get Shaq, and lo and behold, you did listen. So
there we
thanks.
go. See, great ideas at Cavs.com works all the time.
Hi, congratulations, Indians, for bringing Sandy Alomar Jr. back. Shaq, not so bad. And for the Browns, what happens when we have to have blackouts coming up? How does that impact you guys?
The way it will impact us is the rule in the NFL is that if you're not sold out within 72 hours of kickoff, the game is not shown locally. And we had an issue on the Monday Night Football game where we were not sold out within 72 hours of kickoff, or we were outside of 72 hours, and we had ESPN, and we had Budweiser, and we had other sponsors step up, buy the remaining tickets, and we donated them to the USO. And so it was one of those things that we felt it was important because it was Monday Night Football. It was in Cleveland. The last time it had been blacked out, I think, was 2001. And we didn't want to do that. We ended up sharing in some of the costs with them and then made sure that, during Veterans Day week, that veterans were able to enjoy those tickets. Coming up, we have 4 remaining home games. The Pittsburgh game is sold out, but San Diego, Oakland, and Jacksonville have tickets available. And if the tickets aren't sold, we'll be in a similar situation. Now, whether we'll be able to work with sponsors and others to get the blackout removed, at this point I can't say, but there are tickets available. And to Len's point, for people that haven't gone, I'd encourage you to go. We have tickets that range from $32 to $85, so there's something for everybody out there. And I think you know, again, it's one of these things where this town, in my short time here, what I've seen is they support their teams and they're passionate about their sports here, win or lose. And you know, I can tell you from where I sit, it's very frustrating. It's frustrating losing. Nobody likes to lose. But when you see the people in our building, from the head coach to the assistant coaches to football operations, everybody is trying to do things better. The players, they're practicing harder, they're working harder. Everybody is trying to get better. Right now, the results aren't showing on the field, but we're optimistic that things are going to start to turn around. So we're sticking together, and we ask that the city sticks together with us.
Probably our last question.
That's a lot of pressure then.
Last
Mark,
comment.
Mark, you made reference a short while ago to the 400, the 400-plus game win streak back in the 90s. Those teams were constructed on a model of high-powered salaries and big stars, and I suspect, based on that solid streak and the popularity in the community, those teams generated maximum revenues for the ball club. Today's model, of course, is somewhat different, as you referenced earlier, based on being, shall we say, more selective in terms of how you pursue player talent, and sometimes that's reflected in results on the field. Based on the fact that those earlier teams, as I suggested, probably did generate maximum revenues, and of course, you have ups and downs with the way things go right now based on how competitively successful you are. Can you tell me, what's the tipping point there? Mm-hmm. Why have you chosen to go away from that model, although certainly on the player end very expensive, but generated high-level revenues with consecutive sellouts and ad revenues and all the rest, as opposed to a team today which obviously can't give you that same revenue potential?
Well, I can tell you, number one, it wasn't a choice. You know, it was a, as John Hart used to call it, it was a, you know, a collection of very unique variables that all came together at the exact time to allow us to maximize revenues. Most importantly, moving into a new ballpark and a plan that timed that, which represents a boost in revenue that doesn't last forever, lasts for a period of time. With that, winning for the first time in 50 years, making the playoffs for the first time. There was no football team in town, which obviously, you know, takes the competition for certain dollars. The basketball team was not at its peak cycle competitively, which obviously, again, takes away some of the competition for dollars. The city was in a much different place financially. 3 Fortune 500 companies that were here then are no longer here now. So the entire financial, and it allowed us to have payrolls that were in the top 5. Now, you know, Len can tell you, because Danny shares them with me all the time, the marketing numbers don't, this is not a top 5 market. We, I think, at one point had the 3rd highest payroll in all of baseball. And at that point, we're probably the 15th or 16th biggest media market. I think in the last we're 17th or 18th.
We're 18th
now. So, you know, what's happened is our payroll's fallen more in line with the size of our market due to the way the CBA works in baseball. So we operated identically then. We spent what we made. Now we actually have spent more under our current ownership than we've made on multiple occasions, sometimes to very large levels, which we never did during that run period of time. So it's not a question of making a decision, it's a question of understanding that our operating conditions have dramatically changed. Tough because it's on such a short time frame backdrop to those great teams, so we get evaluated in light of the way we made decisions then. Having been a part of the way we made decisions then, we made decisions entirely differently than how we have to make them now. We have to make them now with very different cycles in mind, with the effort to win. It's challenging now.
All right, couple of things just to wrap up. One, to thank the 3 of you. Like I said, this is a phenomenal panel of experience in the sports business. Interesting hearing about this. You know, I think people are very passionate about sports, and you know, you're talking about hundreds of millions, you know, businesses that are hundreds of millions of dollars of business, and yet all the fans see are, you know, 50 hours on the field. That's all. That's it for the year. Not a whole lot more in the NBA and baseball. So it's interesting hearing the breadth of what goes on from a business standpoint that feeds into just that small amount that the fans see. So I would say personally, thank you all for what you do for Cleveland.
Thank you, David, for facilitating our panel today, and thanks everybody for coming. We hope to see you in 2010 at one of our next Amplify events. Thank you.